Hello and welcome to another video of fantastic brushes and when to use them. Today we're going to look at the clay brushes. The clay and the clay buildup. The clay brush is a sculpting brush that works like the standard brush. So let's have a look at the standard brush. Except that the standard brush pushes in and out the geometry, whereas the clay brush will add and remove the geometry. The clay brush, like the name implies, is like adding bits of clay, bits of material to your model, and it's very nice to build up or carve in the volume. As you can see, let's bump up the resolution. As you can see, the standard brush will bulge out the surface, whereas the clay brush really almost leaves the same thickness all around. And spoilers, the clay buildup brush is my main sculpting tool. So the main difference between the clay brush and the clay buildup is that the clay buildup brush is set up to use square alpha, like so, and gives a more textured look. And the clay buildup is the one I use all the time. The reason why, let's open up this character. The reason why is that I think it's the nicest way to build up your geometry. You can lay down a few strokes and then smooth it, and even if you smooth out all the imperfections, the imperfections were there, and it almost, you can't really tell, but it almost gives out the texture of the fibers of the muscles. So that's why it's the brush I like to use the most. To build up my form, you can really go into and slowly build up, then smooth out. You can build, smooth, and also the what I like to use the clay buildup for is for hair. Let's scale it down, move it up. Because it gives you it's really nice to build the flow of the hair. You can use the texture as well to your advantage, where they overlay. And when I sculpt hair, I usually smooth down a lot less than when I make muscles or build up volume. So this way, if you combine it with your other brushes, you can really build up the flow of the hair. You can use the overlaps to break up the strands, and when you can use the Alt to carve in, and time I really need to, I just like the way the shape slowly builds up. So you have more control over your shape, and you can always smooth it out if it's too textured. So what I usually do is just lay down a few strokes, smooth it out, strokes, smooth it out. So yeah, the clay I use a little bit less, but where the main difference between the two. So imagine for instance, you tend to sculpt using the standard brush, which is fine. But imagine that you were to merge those two subtools together for some reason, and now you have two different polygroups, and you wanted to sculpt on those two polygroups at the same time. What happens when you use the standard brush is that it kind of bulges everything. See, you can see that the hairline is bulging out. Whereas if you use the clay tool and you sculpt, you can actually sculpt on both of them as if they were one. Because the clay tool and the clay brush and the clay buildup, they work in a way where you can really work on multiple groups at the same time, and you can really blend your model. So it's also where the clay tool really shines, is where when you have let's make it sharper. If for instance you have a hole like this and you wanted to fill it up, if you try to fill it up with the standard brush, you could, but you're actually bulging everything at the same time. Whereas if you use clay is really good at filling up spots. Not very obvious. Let's make a big cut like so. Imagine you wanted to sculpt in a scar, but you wanted to have to give it some texture. You wanted to have it healed at some parts, or the skin to be still attached at some parts. So you made your cut, and then you want to join two parts together. See, when I sculpt with the standard brush, where the seam is, the two shapes, the two bulging parts fight each other. But if I use clay buildup, I can actually fill the gap. You can always move the standard brush. You can always do something. If you're happy with the standard brush, you can use the standard brush. But I find it easier, it gives nicer results if you use the clay buildup tool. So there you are. The clay buildup is the one I would recommend. You can use clay if you don't like the texture look, but the clay brushes are really nice to build up volume, to work in a more clay real life sculpting. If you want to, if you're familiar, or if you like the feeling of adding material and removing material instead of moving the model around, it's great for that. And it's also great to working across multiple surfaces, and it's great for filling in some gaps. So that's my go-to sculpting brush, And that should wrap this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.